numbers here.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Zoning case ZC-17-055 takes place in Joliet Township. The applicant is requesting a map amendment from A1 to I2 in order to house West End Tool and Die. So they will be developing the property for that purpose. The Planning and Zoning Commission recommended approval of the map amendment request, and there were no objectors at that meeting. So I'll take any questions that you may have.
Any questions or by the committee? We have a motion to approve. Second. Any objectors to this? Okay. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay, next item.
The next item is zoning case ZC-17-057. This one taking place in Lockport Township. This is also a request from A1 to I2 in order to expand a concrete company being operated on the northern parcel to this one. The Planning and Zoning Commission also recommended approval, and there were no objectors at the public hearing.
Thank you. We have a motion to approve.
Moved.
Second. Any questions by committee? Any objectors? You want to come down to the podium?
Sure.
You walk around this way.
State your name, please.
My name is Mary Burnitz, B-U-R-N-I-T-Z. I live at 14116 High Road. I'm objected to this expansion of this facility. And I believe that there's more people on our street that are. Nobody else has been able to make it, so I'm here representing the entire population of High Road that's in objection. And I know that there have been emails sent and phone calls made. I was instructed by one of our neighbors yesterday that some card had been sent to all the local residents. I never received anything. And I live 8 houses away from this property.
They post the signs there, don't they, concerning public hearing on the change? Did you see those?
On the property itself?
Yes.
No, I haven't paid attention.
Well, you'd have to go by there to see them.
Well, I was told by a neighbor, she was told by a committee member that cards were sent individually to the homes.
Okay.
So I never received anything.
Probably within a certain area?
It's only, the notice is only given to abutting property owners.
Abiding, so.
Abutting, so those who share a property line with.
Oh, okay, so then she must have been misinformed. Okay. All right, well, that's all I have to say. I object to it, so.
Thank you.
Hey, Tom,
Yes.
I had about 5 calls on this, and then I got an email, and basically wanted to. I'm not going to be able to vote on it because my niece's husband works for this company, and there'd be it's a conflict. But the city of Lockport is saying no, and then Lockport Township, I guess, is saying no according to this email. Do we have that on record?
I haven't seen that.
I didn't receive any
I don't know.
comments from the city of Lockport.
I just got it on an email, so I'm
Okay.
only repeating what I have here. So, I give it to you, but I don't know if that's the case or not. Because I'm assuming that they're not making stuff up, but at the same time, there could be something where it's not all the information. You want me to give you this?
Sure.
Is the petitioner here?
Yes.
Would you like to come down to the podium?
This is that.
State your name.
Good morning. My name is John Antonopoulos. I'm an attorney. I represent Concrete by Wagner, who's been operating their business there for probably 25 years. They're a local business company. All of the notices were sent out. Signs were posted. We have no objections. Kind of surprised to see this lady make a remark that there's an objection, because this is the first time we've heard of anybody objecting to it. It's surrounded by, you can see from the notices, pipeline companies, industrial companies, so it fits in. Mr. Wagner has operated a stellar business. There's been no complaints about how his operation is run. He's going to tear down the existing single-family home. He's going to expand his building for storage of his equipment.
Okay. Any questions by committee? Did you want to say something?
Yes.
You want to come up to the podium? Thank you.
Mind if I just sit there?
Sure. State your name, please.
Grant Spooner, 14200 High Road. Unusual, I'm not used to being on both sides of the camera. I live on High Road. I'm familiar with the property, I'm familiar with the prior owners, I'm familiar with all the violations that property had, where they put 75 loads of fill in, and land use whitewashed it. The only industrial property on that road is Wagner and the pipeline across the street, and the pipeline is federal jurisdiction. That's the only industrial property around, well, you have Edison's Highlines running just to the north of Wagner property. So other than that, it's all residential. I see no reason to increase an industrial area in a residential area. It's not a good fit. Right now, the property, it looks residential, even though they have some pole barns in the back, which were built in violation of the code also. As far as the sign, I drive by that property about twice a day. There's no sign out front. As far as announcing any action by land use. Notices, I realize the notices only go to the adjacent owners, and there's only one, maybe two across the road, and they're all family, and they're in favor of it. And like I said, it's all residential except for Wagner. The Wagner has another piece of property on 143rd, which was their original site before they moved to High Road. And that's still in operation in a residential area. So that's my spiel.
This is the north end of High Road, isn't it?
It's on the north end of High Road, right at the edge of the unincorporated area. On the other side of that, on the other side of the High Lines, is the city of Romeoville.
Okay, most of the residential is south of that property?
No, all of Romeoville is residential. Across the road is residential. South of it is all residential. There is no business properties on the High Road.
Okay.
Other than that, it's just plopped in the middle of a neighborhood.
Okay, but it's been there for how long?
Roughly about 10 years.
Okay.
Nobody knew about it before he went in.
Okay. Any other questions?
Sure.
Judy?
Of Grant, I guess, not really, I was gonna ask our staff some questions, so.
Oh, I had one other thing. I'm kind of curious. Wagner is the applicant. NASA owns the property. Why isn't NASA making the zoning change instead of Wagner, who doesn't own the property?
I don't know. Maybe the attorney knows.
I can address that question. We have a contract to buy the property, so we needed permission from the owner, and there's a letter in the file, because staff has it, authorizing me to represent the applicant in his proceedings. If the board grants the zoning change, we're going to close on the property, and Wagner is going to buy it and
Okay.
build a new building.
Oh, so, question. So you're trying to, you want to do this prior to the change in property ownership?
It's contingent upon, we have a contract, it's contingent upon the zoning change. If the zoning change goes through, we're going to have a closing shortly thereafter.
So is that, I want to ask our staff, so is that typical that we would do something like this?
We get the current property owners, like an affidavit of owner's consent.
Okay.
all that's it.
Thank you. Any other comments?
So I'm gonna ask for next.
Judy?
So I just wanted to know, are there any existing violations at this current site right now? Or has everything been taken care of? Or, I mean, he mentioned there were some, so I'm not sure.
There was a previous zoning case approved on this property for the current owner. They were in violation for operating a contractor shop. They came before the Planning and Zoning Commission, the Land Use Committee, and the Will County Board a few years ago. What they pursued was a special use permit for a contractor shop in A1, which really wouldn't be an option today. Upon new ownership, that contractor's shop is void. So in then selling the property, anybody who purchases can only operate what's permitted in A1. So that becomes void and all those violations associated. There is no active violation by any means at this time. And from what I understand with my discussions with their attorney, they're in the process of kind of moving out of that property.
That's, I mean, because the picture that we have is kind of, it's really difficult to tell exactly how many houses are in the area, because it looks like there's lots of trees from it.
To the south, it's mostly residential properties outside of the ComEd utility lines. Just to the west is an industrial zone property along New Avenue, and that was recently rezoned in 2016. They just haven't developed it yet. And that came before you for a landscaping business in order for them to operate there. And then this property is within the boundary agreement for the city of Romeoville. The city of Romeoville submitted comments. They have no objection to the map amendment request, even though it is kind of in direct opposition of their current comprehensive plan that they updated. They don't see this as any sort of problem at this time.
And just one other comment. The neighbor who lives next door, who owns residential, she has no objection. In fact, we've agreed we're going to put a landscape buffer in there, a 20-foot landscape buffer between the property with nice planting, so that we're not going to interfere with their use. And again, Wagner, who's buying this property, who's going to operate it, he's never had any building code violations whatsoever. He's a local business person who wants to expand his business and going to tear down those non-conforming buildings and build something that's state-of-the-art and compatible with his existing use.
Okay. Any other comments? No? Okay, we have a motion and a second. We have a roll call. Don't you have a motion, Dave? Okay. We have a roll call?
Chairman Weigel,
Yes.
Judy O'Gala,
Yes.
Steve Ballage,
Abstain.
Laurie Summers,
Yes.
Denise Winfrey,
Yes.
Mark Ferry.
Yes. Okay, motion carries.
Thank you. When will this be on the county board's agenda?
I don't know. Do you know? Yes, tomorrow? Tomorrow.
Oh, tomorrow?
Thursday.
Thursday?
Thursday.
Thank you very much.
Okay, Janine, you have the next case?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Zoning case ZC-17-062 takes place in New Lenox Township. The applicant is requesting a special use permit for light equipment sales in order to sell vehicles such as go-karts and scooters in an I-1 zoning district. There were no objections to this zoning case. The Village of New Lenox also reviewed it at their plan commission and their full village board, and they had no objection. They recommended 2 conditions which have been included in staff's 4 conditions for the special use permit. Staff is recommending approval, and the Planning and Zoning Commission also recommended approval with the 4 conditions.
I'm moved.
Can you just please let us know what the 4 conditions are?
Sure. So the first condition is our standard upon 14 days of written notice to the owner of record that we're granted access and right of entry for inspection. The second condition is in regards to the parking lot and providing accessible spaces. The owner does have a couple of building permits with us. So that was part of the building permit review, is that accessible spaces must be provided in accordance with state statutes. Condition 3, we are requesting landscaping being put at the road frontage areas. It is an industrial property and it has been developed, so there is no provision for us to require landscaping through the building permit process because the site's been developed. New Lenox would like some landscaping and we are recommending it as well, so some road frontage. The 4th condition is in regards to the open building permits, that the applicant shall complete all required, shall secure the building permits and complete all required inspections within 6 months of county board approval.
Okay. Do we have a motion to approve? Motion second. Any questions by committee? Any objectors to this? Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay, other business? Pre-authorization to foreclose on Highland Ridge. Just got that, Scott?
Yes, sir. Staff is requesting pre-authorization to foreclose on the Highland Ridge South PUD subdivision surety. We have every reason to believe that the developer and the bank are going to renew this letter of credit, but as you know, we get the paperwork ready in the event that they don't.
Okay. Any questions by committee? Have a motion to approve?
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Next one is site vacation, Woodridge.
Yes, sir. The next 2 items are related, 2 and 3. If you look at the diagram that's in your packet, basically the petitioner is, in item 2, is going to vacate the plat of the triangular lot because he's found that economic conditions, it's basically not saleable. And then he's going to plat a new lot 6, which is item 3. So there are 2 plats here, the first one being the plat of vacation for lot 8, and then the next item is the final plat for Woodridge Estates 3rd edition.
Okay. We have a motion to approve the vacation.
Motion.
Motion second. Any objectors to this? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay, the next item is the final plat for this same edition. We have a motion to approve.
Motion.
Second.
Second. Any objectors to this? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay. Next item is text amendments for dwelling units in industrial district. Colin?
Good morning.
Good morning.
Your favorite topic again, zoning ordinance updates, or text changes. With the recent update that we did last month, we did notice that we were a little hasty in one of our changes, and that was regarding owner-occupied accessory dwelling units in industrial areas. We had them in the original ordinance, and when we made the changes with regard to the A1 and E1 sections, somehow or another, the owner-occupied accessory units in the industrial areas were deleted. We were trying to clean things up. Well, it didn't get completely cleaned up because we didn't address it within the text itself. So what we're proposing is, if you would like to keep the original intent of the owner-occupied accessory dwelling units in industrial areas, we have some suggested text to keep that going forward. Or we can keep the text as it is and not have owner-occupied accessory dwelling units in industrial areas.
It seemed to work in the past. Didn't we have any problems with it? So we might as well go back to the way it was. Anybody else have any?
I agree.
Okay. What was the other one, the accessory storage?
Accessory storage for home occupations. During the latest steps in our review of the update that we did last month, It was after the public hearing, and it was asked, what are we doing about the home occupations and the accessory storage? And we said, well, we didn't address it at all because we did not think that it didn't rise to, it wasn't identified as an issue. But it was after the public hearing, so we couldn't address it at that time. Now, we can hold a public hearing addressing it. So what we're suggesting is to keep it consistent with the commercial storage of, the parking of commercial vehicles. We're suggesting that accessory storage should be similar in that way, where the A1, E1, E2, R1, and R2 districts are may have accessory storage for home occupations, but the other R districts, we would prohibit the accessory storage in outside units.
Okay,
So
so-
everything would have to be in the house.
Okay, if they have a home occupation in like an R3 or R4, they'd have to store the materials within their building, in the basement, or in the closet
main structure,
somewhere,
yes.
or the attic, or whatever.
Right, that's the intent of this proposed change.
Any comments by committee? I'm in favor of this.
Would that change exclude detached garage? Would they be allowed to put stuff in a detached garage?
You would exclude it in the R3 to, the R2A to R6.
There are some people in, well, I don't have unincorporated, we're in a city, but there are some people that run a home business and they store stuff in the garage that's detached. But they don't have like a pole barn or none of that. It's a regular garage that they use for their business.
But
So
it would be permitted in the R1 and R2, but not the R2A through R6.
David, do you have a comment?
See, it's not turning on from there, you know. Maybe I can place a little context for this as well. Prior to 2012, home occupations in all zoning districts were limited to single-family residence. Storage of materials and associated goods and products and things were not authorized within the accessory structures. In 2012, this is one of those things where we thought perhaps we were doing a good thing by expanding that to the accessory dwelling units or to accessory structures to allow people to store materials, equipment, goods associated with the home occ in those buildings. Over the past several years, there's been a few instances where perhaps that may be the source of aggravation of neighbors with perhaps the activity that may be associated with the home occ is when we do allow those things to be stored in the accessory building. So the thought was is that, as Colin stated, is to make it consistent somewhat with the changes and restrictions on commercial vehicles on properties, is to eliminate within the R2A through R6 zoning districts the ability to store those materials and goods and products in the accessory dwelling, or accessory structure, thereby, somewhat probably eliminating a lot of the exterior activity on the building, the scope and nature of the business and things of that nature. And the trouble with this is that the county is so diverse with regard to expectations and what people desire with the use of pole buildings or accessory buildings. And this is what we thought perhaps might be the best fit, is again just to kind of be somewhere in the middle of the road where we identified maybe the more dense zoning districts where we eliminate that and still allow it to continue within the less dense zoning districts.
Okay, Judy?
So how are you gonna know if somebody has a home business and they're storing stuff out in their building? I mean, how are you gonna know?
Well, we don't have applications for home occupations. The county does not license businesses, so there's no zoning review on that. Again, and also as well, we're complaint-based. So we would look into it if there's a complaint.
So how many complaints did we have that you know was on a similar situation like this in those other zoning districts?
Yeah, I don't have a specific number. I know that right now we are dealing with one particular that's been going for about 2 years, and is constant with the neighbors complaining back and forth.
And they're in a smaller zoning district?
They're within, I believe, in R3.
In R3?
Yes.
So, I don't know. All I know is it seems like we've put all these regulations on and then we have a difficult time. How do you know if somebody's storing something in their garage or anything like that, I really don't know how you can know that. And, I don't know, I'm not gonna be in favor of this. I think that sometimes we take one issue and we put together some wording to prohibit it from ever happening again, and we react on one issue. I'm not a person who likes to support legislation for one issue. I mean, if we have a big issue going on all over and it's something that we feel we need to handle, that makes sense to me. But I don't really find it right to do any kind of legislation to prohibit something for one person or two people. I mean, I just think that this goes over the top of telling people what they can do. And I don't know how the heck you're gonna know. Listen, Denise has a hair salon thing she runs in her house, and she puts her beauty supplies in it, let's just say. How are you gonna know that? And how are you gonna enforce that? And I think I'm not in favor of it.
Just something similar to, that type of activity would not necessarily be prohibited by an action such as this. What you're probably looking at more of the uses that are associated with contractors that have multiple vehicles and equipment, and they have a lot of materials, and instead of perhaps renting a space or owning a space in an industrial condominium, they operate from their home. So,
wouldn't we need to be more specific then? Because she's right. If there's small businesses that are not, such as, putting your beauty supply stuff or whatever in those places, because there's people that run small businesses, and if you're not being more specific on what you're talking about, I just think we need to.
Well, I think it's just to discourage a large contractor that's going to disrupt the neighborhood.
But again, if it's not spelled out and someone does have the type of business that Judy spoke about, that's gonna, if there's not an indicator there. You understand what I'm saying? So.
Yeah, I agree with both of the county board members here, but we got to remember that there are small businesses out there that are small businesses, not big giant things. So like I have a friend that is in the city, so we don't have rules over him, but he has a small medical supply company, and he uses his garage to store all the stuff he's going to ship out. UPS comes 3 or 4 times a day to his house. Now, if he had to go and get a building or rent somewhere, he'd be out of business because he doesn't make that much money. So now his house will go in foreclosure, and you have nothing but problems. So when you say they can't use their garage, I'm not talking about a big pole barn, I'm talking about a garage. You tell someone they can't use their own garage to do their own home business, I think that's wrong. But as far as a second structure for that, well, that's a different story. But we can't start regulating, especially unincorporated. We got to remember, we in unincorporated we live in unincorporated areas because we don't want the laws that cities give us. And that's the bottom line. And later on, I'll be talking about the building codes and with the plumbing inspections, because I found out. I contacted the state, like I said I would, and I gave you guys all the information. It's the same thing. We're unincorporated. We're supposed to be a little bit more relaxed.
Right.
Mr. Weber, just quick. Also, Board of College, you need to also be aware that the source of this direction with the accessory structures and home occupations is from the board, not from staff. So we're responding to direction from board members. So I think we're looking for direction from you as the committee and the board members as to what you want to do with that particular topic.
I think Mr. Muse has asked us to look into this and see what we could do to not have this problem in the future with these contractors that are coming into their houses and setting up contracting business. Okay. Go
May
ahead.
I make a suggestion to the language?
Correct.
That Mr. College's suggestion that we have a limit on the square footage of an accessory structure, would that be inappropriate?
That would probably be all right. Again, we're talking about it here, and it's hard to think of the unintended consequences. You say, yeah, we can limit the size. But, I'm just looking at somebody that uses their garage that's existing already. Instead of putting their car in there, they're putting in their products. you know, and then you tell them they can't do it, and they probably never get caught until the neighbor next door gets mad at them and files a complaint.
Right.
Also, too, is that with the recent update, we did review accessory structure square footage, and it was the board's desire not to really reduce it much more than they did. So they wanted to maintain the ability to have that square footage. So it's kind of a conundrum here as to how you want to deal with this. And this is the first stab at it from the staff standpoint as, you know, a logical way to do it.
I'm glad you guys bring it up. You know, thank you, because it's a tough issue.
Okay, just so I'm clear, I'm not encouraging anyone that's running a contractor's business. We have an issue up, I asked for someone running an auto body and repair shop out of their garage in a subdivision. That's not what I'm talking about. I mean, I just think, to me, it's the verbiage, if we, you know, on what we're gonna do. And I mean, I know by us, they've called several times and nothing's been done about this, and there's 12 to 15 cars out there. Those types of businesses should not be run in those residential areas. I agree, but if we're talking like a medical supply or computers or something like that, if they're using their garage to store, where do we draw the line? If it's not spelled out, that's all I'm asking.
You know, you also have to look at also from an enforcement standpoint as well, as it's easy to, you know, for example, and being very general here is to say, yes, you're using it, or not, you're not using it for this particular use. But when you drill down to specific business types and what products may be stored within boxes within the garage, we don't desire to go into somebody's garage and start opening up boxes to see what they have in them. That's not what we want to be doing here. And that's why we went general on something like this, is either you're using it or you're not. So, Judy?
So here's the thing. So I grew up in Chicago, and my dad was a small businessman, and he had first time he had a janitorial business. He kept his stuff in the garage at our house. We moved out to unincorporated area in Bensonville, which is DuPage County, and he had his business from there. He went to be a general contractor. He always stored it, and in a small little building behind the garage, he kept his big tools that he used for whatever. So here's the whole thing. My dad had such a small business that he was able to have, he had himself, he had one main employee, and sometimes he would get another person, and that was it. And so we limit our small businessmen from what they can do, because really they can only afford to run that business and support their family from their home. They can't go out. My dad didn't have the money to go out and rent a facility to store anything. I believe lots of our people do that from their homes, and I think that, you know, it sounds nice and it seems like a great idea to say, well, we really don't want this, but you know what, their neighbor has a dog that I can't stand barking, so, I mean, this goes on and on. We can go on and on about this, so I just think that, we're overstepping our boundaries on what we want to do here. I think that if we limit this and limit this and limit this, and I don't know who came to you and asked you to put this forward, I have an opinion in my mind where those people might live, because they live in areas where the mayors want to say, you know what, I want to have a say in this and this and this. They want special permits and everything. I am so done with that. I'm so done with that. And annex the darn property of your town, have control over it that way. That's what they do. And I have a feeling I know where these areas are, because this is where the stuff comes from. And yeah, it is a pain when you have somebody who fixes cars in their neighbor's garage. I don't know why, but a lot of people let go, and they're in their 50s, 60s, maybe early, and they had good paying jobs, and now they got let go, and you can't get a job, so they're doing something from their house. We limit people. I'm opposed to this entirely restricting it anywhere.
David, why don't you go back and work on this some more and see if you can refine it?
Okay, is there any specific direction the committee members would have on refining it? Any suggestions on what you want to see, or more importantly, what you don't?
I'd like to see where a person would be allowed to have a small business and use their property.
Right.
You know, like Judy said, you know, if someone's 50 years old and they lose their job and they're a plumber, no one's going to hire them. So they got to go on their own and create their own business. Same with a carpenter or electrician or whatever. So, you tell them no, so what do? Lose their house? I mean, or go on welfare? I mean, I don't want to see that, and I don't think anyone in this board wants to see that.
Mark?
By the same token, you don't want to turn a residential neighborhood into a mini industrial park either. So it's kind of like you're walking a tightrope, no matter what you do.
mouth.
So.
What are you? So I don't know, this is the same thing with the darn Echo House. What is Echo Housing, is that the right word? Sorry. We have a county board member who sits on this board who's worried that everybody's gonna put in Echo Housing, okay? So when we put in things to control where Echo Housing can be, because they're worried that there's gonna become an Echo Housing epidemic in Will County, it's the same thing here. Are you going to turn an area into a residential, are you going to turn a residential area into a mini industrial area? I don't know. I don't think everyone on the block is going to do the same kind of things. So we walk that fine line, and the fine line is simply this. How much say do you think we need to have in somebody who lives in Will County, inappropriate as to what they can do and can't do? I think we go over the board. We go over the board all the time on this and saying what you can do and what you can't do. That lady was objecting to that one facility in her area being expanded. Okay, so what do? We went ahead and approved it. We approved it because we believe that that person we can zone it for that. We believe that that person can have the right to do on that property what he wants. He needs to make sure he's accommodating to whatever stipulations you guys have put in according to conditions, so he doesn't interfere with her. So we allow that. Then the next time, I don't want Denise keeping her hair products in the garage. Or Steve to do something else. Where are we? I'm not sure where we are. I get confused. Gloria.
But one thing I think we need to think about is different from storing something versus running a business out of the garage. And I think that's maybe where you start thinking about where that distinction comes in. Because when that business starts overflowing out of the garage or out of that extra building, I think that's when the neighbors start having issues. So I don't know if that helps anyway or clarifies. I just think, I don't have any problem with people storing things in their garages. I don't think that impedes the look of your neighborhood or the business, but I think when it starts overflowing into the garage, and now it looks more like a warehouse than it does.
I would like to summarize what everybody's done, so Judy can go there and walk down the street.
Oh, so my comment was, so I get what Gloria's saying. So the person in like say Gloria's community over there who's running a car maintenance shop out of his home. So this is a business he's doing out of his garage. Do we require a business permit for that type of action or not?
Yeah, I can't answer definitively, but I'm guessing is that if there's a change of use in the building, or if it's some kind of activity that would affect the commercial code, possibly. But for example, the one I'm aware of, I don't believe there was a change of use for any commercial code applied to the accessory building. It's just a storage of product and material.
Okay, so
we can follow up on
can
that
somebody
with you.
run out of their home in the garage and fix cars? And and then again, it's so confusing because, my neighbor is really good at fixing a car. So he might fix my car for me, and then it pours into, now there's 15 cars lined up. So there's a problem in how do you figure out what it is and what's right. Do they have to have a permit for running an auto body shop? I mean, is that considered then an auto body shop or I don't know what you call it, car maintenance facility out of the garage versus, this is just what I do on the side. I work at Terry's Ford, and I fix cars there, and I fix some of my neighbors' cars on the evenings. I don't know how we distinguish between that either.
There are, under one part of the home occupation sections, prohibited uses. And animal hospitals, eating, drinking establishment, retail stores, like commercial storage, recreational vehicles, funeral and interment services. You're not allowed to manufacture as well, so there's no assembly. Automobile and truck repair, are prohibited in home
So there
office.
you have it right there, it's
So,
in the code.
So it is spelled out, yes.
It is, there you go, so he's in violation.
And then any other use is not deemed to be customary or appropriate home occupation by the zoning administrator.
Okay, so you said home repair, I mean auto repair, but auto repair, is it running an auto repair business out of your home? Or is it just, I'm confused.
You know, if you have, you know, for example, if you have in your home, you have an office, and you're conducting your business within that home office, that would be considered home occupation.
Okay.
However, if, for example, if then it goes into prohibited use, such as automobile repair, goes into that garage or in the driveway, no, it's not authorized. So you're limited, you know, with the home occupation of, for example, right on the way it's permitted. An example is, you know, a gentleman may have, or a woman may have an office in their house where they do electrical work, okay? And some of that electrical work requires them to store some of the materials and goods within the garage. And they have, under the ordinance, the authorized allowable vehicles to run that business. That's an example of, you have a home occupation, you have the gentleman or the woman that may have that themselves, and I think it's maybe max one employee that will run out of their home. They may schedule their, you know, their work during the day out of home. In the morning, they may go out and get, you know, load up a few things into their van and go out and do their business all day, and then come back at night, and that's it. So, I mean, that's an example of a home occup that uses, you know, accessory structure.
And that's approved,
That would be an authorized use, yes. And what would happen under the text that was put forth today is that, you know, the electrical contractor could still have their home office. They could, you know, do their scheduling, invoicing, all their business activities in their home office. They could still bring home the commercial vehicle and, you know, park in the driveway, but they couldn't store all the materials and goods in the garage to run the business. You know, they'd have to keep it contained within the truck or within the van.
Okay, again, so that would be an example of exactly what my dad did, and he kept our family living well, and he kept, I mean, he used to have bricks in our driveway from time to time, and, you know, I mean, we lived in unincorporated, and it worked. My dad couldn't have afforded to go anywhere else and do that job.
But what the problem lies within the enforcement of, where you may have a scenario where you have a contractor who's storing, you know, I was on the call taking advantage of what's allowed by just, you know, perhaps, and I'm going to the extreme here, filling their garage full tilt with all the materials and goods. They have the maximum number of commercial vehicles they can, you know, have. Perhaps they even have more than the required employees coming to site. Okay, you have commercial vehicles that are parked in the right of way beyond the maximum number that we can allow, but we don't have jurisdiction over the right of way if it's a township, for example. So we can't go out and enforce the parking restrictions on the right of way. So now you have more than the authorized employees coming in, more than the authorized commercial vehicles coming to the site. You have a lot of activity perhaps of unloading and loading the vehicles in the driveway, okay? And not that it's inherently bad to have that business there, but because we allow the storage within the accessory building, it's facilitating all this other activity that causes the problems. Then you start getting the complaints from the neighbors about all the commercial vehicles being parked in front of my house. You know, there's too many employees coming. Well, when we go out with an inspection, it's very difficult for us to go out and sit in the street and start counting employees. Again, it's not what we really want to be doing.
Right.
But if you all get back to the root of the problem, which is why we put this forward today, is you're facilitating all this other activity, not you, but the county.
Right.
By allowing the storage of the materials and equipment and accessory structure. That allows that business then to operate with all that other activity going on. If you took away that storage in the building, you wouldn't have necessarily all this other activity. And if there's less storage in the building and you get complaints, that's where we have to go out and say you can't do that.
See, one of the things that, I'm going back probably about 7 or 8 months ago, we had a case where a guy built accessory building that was bigger than his house. And I think most of this problem that we're talking about comes from one person that stretches it out, that there's still in the law. But if you look at the whole county, how many people are gonna go out and go to the maximum limit? You know, are we talking about 3, 5, maybe 10 in the whole county? I mean, it's not something that, to me, we should create a law that's gonna infringe on people that actually need to have the structures to use to store stuff. Because there's gonna be a few people that push the limits. And whatever you get, no matter what the law is, some people are gonna push the limits.
They do.
You know, so, you know, I'd be in favor of allowing people to use their existing garages. Now, if they want to build something new, and then, okay, now there's a different story. Now, they're going to build something new, what are they going to do with it? You know, so you're not going to get a pole barn, you know, that's 40 feet by 100 feet. You know what I'm saying?
But the thing is, under the current code, if someone builds an accessory structure and everything on the property is compliant with zoning,
Yeah.
you know, the max, if it's an that's right. I mean, it's a detached accessory building.
But most
Yeah.
people won't be pushing the limits. So, you know, by us saying we want to prevent a handful of people that are going to push the limits so that people that really need to do this, they can't do it. You know, they're not going to be causing the problem. It's going to be just a handful of people causing a problem. So we're making laws just to affect a handful of people that affect everybody.
And that's your decision.
I mean, no, I'm not arguing.
Yeah.
I'm talking with you, but it's for the board.
Yeah.
Because they're,
You just have to be over there with the way we look.
I know.
yeah, we're not arguing with you.
Oh, no, don't believe me, I fully get it. I understand. I think what we're looking for today is direction from the committee. Do you want to continue looking at it? I think that's what you said. Or do you want to say, no, we want to leave it like it is?
I think we need to do a little more fine tuning of it.
Okay.
Have you taken any surveys of area, other counties in the area, what they have in their ordinance as far as this is concerned?
You know, we can do that. We haven't necessarily done it for this particular issue, but just on general, with many issues, everybody deals with it differently. Every county has their own ideas, or jurisdiction has their own ideas on what's acceptable to their constituents. But we can certainly look at that.
Well, maybe we'll get some new views that way, I don't know. Judy?
I just want to be clear again, because I always forget, if we have R1 and R2, the sizes of those properties versus the other ones. I know some are very small.
Do you have a phone? If not, I can pull it.
No, I don't have
I got it here.
You know, R2A is 30,000 square feet minimum lot size. When you go to R3, it drops to 20,000, R4 is 12.5, R5 is 10, R6 is 10. So when
They're
you
really
get,
small, so they're not really going to be able to put a lot in this right now.
Well, no, don't say that, because.
yeah, the R2 is a 40,000 square foot. But when you get to the accessory structure square footages, you know, your R2A is 1,800 square feet, R3 is 1,800 square feet. Those, I don't have the revised numbers, so they may be a little, I don't know if
So
it's
the
changed.
accessories are fairly large.
Not much, but they're still large.
So they're fairly large, so we let somebody put an accessory structure on that's fairly large, and then, depending on, then we want to restrict, you know, some things that they can do from the home. You can change it anyway, I'm going to be a no vote on it, I just don't support it.
Let me ask you a question. I don't know, we'd have to look and see from a standpoint from enforcement, but what are your thoughts on, just like we limit the area of the home that can be used?
I didn't hear you, I'm sorry.
How we limit the area, the county limits the percentage of a residence that can be used for a home occ. What if you reduce the amount of the accessory building that could be used, a certain percentage?
Within those.
Like a percentage, maybe?
Like, you know,
10%
if you have an accessory, like a garage, you could use, you know,
50%.
50%, 20% of your garage for it, your square footage. So if you have outside dimensions, you could use
Yeah,
a
I wouldn't
certain
like that
percentage.
because if somebody's in the plumbing business, they're gonna put extra pipes and tools in there. You know, if they lost their job, just think about it. You lose your job and you're a contractor, and no one's gonna give you hired. So now you're gonna have to find your own work. You're gonna be storing your tools and some of your stuff in there. And that's just the nature of the beast. And frankly, it's unenforceable until somebody calls and complains. And so you have then you guys are gonna have a headache because you're gonna have neighbor wars. You know, where they each call, you know, my neighbor said this about me, so I'm gonna find something on him. And that's kind of what happens.
And then the ones that are actually legit don't get looked at. So
But they're
that's
always
why
gonna
I'm
be
having-
legit because they find that
I'm having
people get
issues.
nasty when they get in neighbor wars. You know that.
So your neighbor right now, though, can't have that business. right?
Absolutely not.
So that's it, he can't have that business there, but he could fix one or two neighbors' cars. I mean, you're gonna do that stuff. When my snow blower breaks, my son might go, if you lived in an area, which I don't, but if you lived in an area close enough, you could get that snow blower, get it on a trailer, take it over, you're kind of running a snow blowing business out of here. I don't know how to differentiate between that, or you fix cars for a living, like I said, and your aunt comes over and your grandma, because typically you fix your relatives' home vehicles for free.
And that's
They're
not
gonna-
what I'm talking about at all.
So what I'm saying is, but there, to me, I need to know, Lori, if there's a distinction then as to running a business like that or just doing it on your own. That's what I want to know. I mean, if you have a couple of cars out there because you fix your family and friends, is that considered a business versus, probably not because you have no paperwork.
Well,
You
if
have
you
no
have
office.
a,
You
if
have
you
no
have
office.
somebody on occasional work, it's not gonna be a problem.
I mean,
If it's constant work every day, that's.
I don't recall us ever having issues with individuals fixing.
So then that
vehicle.
person in her neighborhood is doing a business out of his home that is not allowed right now. So we have something that could control that.
Actually, not in my neighborhood, our district. So.
All right, well, wherever it is, Lori. I mean, you
Yeah.
can't know everything where everybody is. I
But
don't know
there's,
that.
again, let's look at this enough because I'm very confused by everything, so, on what we can do and what cannot.
We can do
These
anything and
houses
set
are
any
probably
controls.
1,000 feet away from each other at the most, and it's probably not even that much. This is a very small homes type, approximation.
So somebody should put a complaint in on that individual because they're out of violation. They're in violation. They're in violation right now, right?
I would have to
You said you're going to
specifically check.
summarize what you've heard so far.
Yes, that's what I would like to do. Are we done?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so you'd like to look at the kind of the possibly limit the area, perhaps the percentages. We'll look at the use intensity, which will probably also include looking at the list of the prohibited uses, and also looking at the operating standards, such as the number of employees, and traffic generator type things. Vehicles. yes.
Sounds good, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Let's move on. As far as reports from committee members, I have no report. Any committee members? Stephen?
Yeah, I've been in the building code since October, and, where you need a building permit to do repair and maintenance items. And I found out that the city of Chicago, right now I decided to talk about one issue at a time. We have some issues that were approved to be looked at next month at land use, but we took the plumbing code things out because we were told the plumbing laws said we have to do it, and that was the end of it. So, sink traps and shut-off valves and all that stuff you needed to get a building permit for, and that was the end of it. And so I didn't believe that should be it, so I called the state. So now I found out that the city of Chicago exempts all the things, not only the plumbing codes, but exempts all the stuff that I've been talking about. The city of Lockport exempts all of the stuff I've been talking about, including including the plumbing
I
codes.
didn't even touch it.
And the city of Naperville exempts some of them, not all of them, but some of them. Now, the state of Illinois, they sent me a written notice letter, which I distributed to everybody, that says that the state does not require repair, they say maintenance items, to be getting a building permit. And then they're talking strictly about the plumbing code right now. They're saying that according to their records, we don't have the proper type of plumbing inspector, and I know we're talking about hiring a plumbing inspector, and they say on the letter that they encourage us not to hire that type of plumbing inspector. If you look at the top part of that letter, it says that the state encourages us not to do that. And the state says that they don't require building permits for maintenance items. So it's going back to the same topic we've been discussing all day. Does the unincorporated area need to be more strict than the cities? Does the unincorporated area need to follow the state code? Obviously, according to this letter, the answer is no on this one item. There's going to be other issues, but I'm going to have the state respond to each different issue. That way I can talk about one at a time. So next month, I'd like to bring this forward to discuss how we're going to do it. So now the question would be, does this group here want to have unincorporated, stricter than the city of Chicago, and stricter than the city of Lockport, and not listen to what the state says, that we don't have to follow the building permits for maintenance items? So next month I want to have this on the agenda, and when we talk about the other issues that you guys are going to bring forward that we already approved, this issue is one that needs to come up. So we can talk about that.
I'd like to have staff look into this and see if you can give us a recommendation concerning this, the information that Steve has brought forward.
And Tom, I have one other issue that I need to bring up.
No, that was what I was going to ask the committee, if there's a consensus in the committee that they'd like to have the plumbing matters as the fourth issue to discuss. And then we ourselves in that process can contact the state directly with specific matters and correspond with them, with both Brian Radner and Owen. And I don't want to necessarily dispute what's being said in the email, but I just want to be clear is that the county does follow all laws with regarding, both local and state laws with regarding to plumbing matters. But I think that's something the committee does desire to review.
No, I'm not, you're doing a good job. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that we don't have to be as strict, because the city of Chicago is not as strict. Either is the city of Lockport. And I haven't gotten into all the other ones. I only did, Homer Glen is revising all their codes. So I'm saying that unincorporated should be much more lenient than a city. And Chicago's like the biggest city around here. So if they're exempting this stuff, I got their ordinances, they're exempting all of it. So we could, and if the state, and when you call the state, you're going to find out you have to go to the Department of Health where that letter came from, because I called numerous places before I got the right place. But anyway, you'll find out that they're saying that we don't have to get a permit for maintenance items. No, they're not talking about a whole house. They're talking about repairing your property like we've been talking about. And I think that's a real important thing to keep in mind. We're not talking about building a whole new house. But if we're repairing something, we don't need it. And I talked to the building trades. They're in favor of what I'm saying. I talked to the Real Estate Association. They're in favor of what I say. And I'm sure that when because this is actually going to go to a vote, and I would hate to be a board member that voted to make Will County stricter than the city of Chicago for this kind of stuff, and then have their constituents call them up on the phone and scream at them for weeks. But I mean, that's kind of what happens. We're fixing all this stuff. You guys did a great job with the zoning update. I'm town's gone, but I mean, you guys did. I told you numerous times. So, but I have another issue, the procedural issue.
Okay, what's that?
I got an email from Steve Weber's office, or not his office, from him, because there's a gentleman that lives in Mokina that got a citation from our land use department for having an unattended fire. And his citation said, or violation notice, whatever you want to call it, said that he had to appear at the adjudication court. Well, he had plans on going out of town, so this guy actually called me. And I said, well, just go there and pay it. You know, go over to the county building. And he went down here, and nobody had any mechanism to take payment. He said he was guilty, he's paying. No one had any way of taking the money. So he leaves. Well, he got a little bit perturbed, and he called Steve Weber up and asked him, because he's the treasurer, can you take my money? And Steve told him, no. So Steve ended up talking to Jennifer Sharp, and she told him to just not to show up, and then he'll get a notice in the mail that he's guilty and he's got to pay. But on the actual notice, it says he must appear in court. So we have to figure out something where if somebody knows they're guilty and they want to pay and they don't want to go to adjudication court, they can just come pay. You know, so that's some kind of procedure that we have to initiate to correct the situation. Because I'm sure if it happened to this guy, and this guy knows me and he knows Weber, but somebody that doesn't know anybody, what kind of aggravation are they going through? You know, so it all comes down to, it's nothing anybody's done wrong. It's just that we have to have a new policy to accept payment for fines.
We can contact Ms. Sharp and discuss it with her.
And they need to take off, when they do it, they need to take that off their letter that they're sending out, that you're in violation and you must appear. They need to say you may pay ahead of time or you must appear, or something like that.
Judy?
Okay, so this goes back to the permits building permits that have been expired, and we knew there was a group of them that were not expired. We have a new permitting process, so when Mike Smetana was here, he mentioned that would not be going on. One thing that I don't, and so a resident, so I had received one of those letters that I had done my final inspection from 2012 for putting windows in. Another resident who lives near me had gotten one for remodel of his residence for building permit 1500754. I don't know, is your building permit number first to the year that it's out, or no? I don't know.
It does reference the date.
So this guy's pulled his permit on June 8th, 2015. So he got one of these. I have since called land use, and I've been talking with Dawn, and she's been looking into it for me. So this is what I wanted. This is something along the lines with Steve, is that, so here's the thing. This is an issue that, for some reason, whoever was in charge, I do not know, somebody was responsible for collecting the building permit. The person comes, gets a building permit, they go out, they do the work, and it was never closed. So that's an issue on our phone. That's something that our land use department, whoever did, we didn't have something in place, whatever it is, I don't know. But now we're going back and we're issuing all these letters. So the letter goes simply like this. I'm going to read it to you. And just imagine that you receive this letter. This is a building permit for remodel of residence. Now this is 2015, it is currently 2018. You get the above referenced building permit is expired. There's no record of final inspections being successfully completed. Please call or email to schedule final building inspections. Okay, that's not too bad. I got it 3 years ago. I don't know, maybe I just can't remember what I did. I thought I had it done. And then it goes on, the next paragraph is in accordance with section 150.011 of the Will County Building Ordinance. The county has the authority to record a notification of code ordinance violation against the title of the property subject to the permit application. The recording shall constitute legal notice to all concerned, as well as to any subsequent purchases, transfers, guarantees, mortgagees, leases, and all persons claiming or acquiring interest in the property. Now I'm kind of worried because you guys are not not anyone in this room, but that there's going to be a violation put on my title. Then the final paragraph says, please contact the Will County Business Division at 800-815, whatever the number is, or by email within 21 days of this letter. Your prompt response to this correspondence will alleviate the need to proceed with further enforcement regarding this matter. So, one, I know that this thing was dated the 26th of January, it was not postmarked till the 29th, so there's a difference of days there. But this is somebody who has no idea that they hadn't finished it, in this case, because they had gotten, this particular person had a community concerns grant that was for senior citizens, I believe, to come in and do windows, replace windows, do insulation, things like that. And he got a letter from this person that says final inspection date, June 11th, 15. So this got done really fast as far as I know. So my thing is, here's a person thinks that they've done everything they need to do. Now they get this letter, and this guy's 72. He calls up, he's all flustered about everything, telling me he's going to have a heart attack because he's got dogs and he's got this and that, and he doesn't want anyone to come in and blah, blah, blah. So my question is this. I think a letter like this is kind of threatening to the landowner, especially when it was our fault that the inspection, the permit was never closed. And we let it go for 3 years in this case. Well, not quite. June 8th would be 3 years. So, and I know the new permitting process, which is the online one, I've been told has a mechanism in it to pop up to say, hey, these building permits are long, older than 6 months. Somebody needs to look into it. I assume we have an action plan in place. I'd kind of like to know that. But my thought is, I don't know how many permits are like this that we had originally. I don't know how many we still have outstanding that we're sending letters to people. And we talk about life safety issues, and if any of these were life safety issues, the person has probably died by now, as to why we asked them to get the building permit. We get a building permit for some of the stuff Steve has talked about. In 3 years have passed, it can't be that much of a life safety issue, because if I'm still living, it wasn't, because you never did the final inspection. So I'm just very confused, and I would think that a good idea would be to say, first off, Dave, do you know how many building permits are in this category and how many we still have to address?
Well, just first of all, I just want to make clear is that when an individual or a contractor pulls a permit, it's incumbent upon them, it's their responsibility to follow up and obtain all inspections. And typically the owner relies upon the contractor to do that.
Correct.
So it is their responsibility. I can't speak to the past several years on to why homeowners or contractors have not done that. We're down to right now, within you had actually staff count the other day, 274 files that building permit files that be reviewed to see if they can be closed out administratively, or with a little work by our department, or if their correspondence will be sent to the homeowners as the responsible party. To this date, I believe we've sent out about over 800 notices. Okay. And quite honestly, this is one of just a few. I'm sorry that this gentleman, has felt this way, and I'll follow up on this one in a second. But it's just a matter of just a handful, less than probably 5 that I'm aware of that we've had issues with regarding the process. That being said, when I get to the 274, I spoke with the individual that's doing this work, and typically it's about 30% of the permit files that need follow-up. So of all the remaining permit files that will get us current with following up with any open permits, you can probably anticipate maybe about 70 permits that will have to be addressed through this process. And we're about 90% done. We're almost caught up at this point. Now, with this particular gentleman, Dawn has been very good following up with the gentleman in the Center for Community Concerns. She's been in contact with the center this morning, actually, and that they said the property's ready for inspection. And so our office will be coordinating with the homeowner to get this taken care of and finalized as soon as we can. And also knows that the county does not charge to go out and do these inspections to close out the permits. The county was just interested in seeing, again, if the work was done properly to protect the homeowner, for life safety issues, also as well, to make sure that, they get what they paid for as well.
I think they know what they got what they
Yeah.
paid for 3 years later, I
So-
mean, seriously.
But it's,
3 years
so,
later, they don't know if they got the windows done?
but if we're within,
Then they would have
that,
complained.
so we have about 274 files left. on this to go
So, but this letter he got from whoever did the work from
Mhm.
concern says final inspection date this, so this man would not know that. And while it is the responsibility of the contractor or the homeowner to contact,
Mhm.
the final responsibility is on us, that we are the ones who need to, long before, 3 years, my case was 5 years, verify that that was done. So that was an issue that we had within our permitting process.
Which we are proactively taking care of.
Which we are
now.
proactively
It's smart-
taking
It's smart
care of.
that, it makes it very easy, and like I said, probably within 60 days, we'll be current in all this.
Correct. It's just that the thing is, the onus now becomes on the landowner. Like I said, this guy has, in his particular case, he has a dog that's dying of cancer, he has birds, he's all flustered about having people come in his home. And my whole thing is it absolutely necessary that we go ahead and do these final inspections that are 2, 3, 4, 5 years old? Or would it be more appropriate that we just look at taking it and maybe just sending a letter that says, hey, we notice your permit, first off, the letter is threatening. The letter is threatening, David. I don't like the wording in the sense that the individual landowner, in this case, did nothing wrong. Why my permit wasn't closed out, I don't know, probably because we felt the company who got the permit should have done it as well. But the lack was on our end at the land use department. We did not do the job we should have done for whatever reason, and it was for whatever reason. So now we're sending this letter that I said is threatening to the people. What if we sent out a letter and said, hey, listen, we had a glitch in their system, and we are now looking to close out these inspections. You have the ability to waive your right to the inspection. Please sign this and send it back. That would take any legal authority off of our part, versus telling them, you better do this within 21 days to alleviate the need to proceed, to alleviate our need with further enforcement action regarding this matter. This is very threatening to me. I don't know that I did anything wrong, and it's 3 years out of date. So would it make sense to send a letter just to waive it?
I'm all about finding solutions to issues. And so, certainly we can discuss with the state's attorney's office about, the remaining permits that are outstanding as to what direction we can go. This was vetted through the state's attorney's office. So, we can most certainly follow up on that and see if there's a way to relieve the county of any liability. Because I know this is not something that we ourselves administratively would do. We would want some kind of action taken that would authorize this to close out those permits without final inspections.
So Matt, would it be possible that we write a letter, not quite like this, and send it to those that 274 you're looking at, and say, hey, we've noticed that you had a building permit 1, 2, 3, 4, whatever your issue was, dear so-and-so, we noticed that your permit's more than 6 months out of, because there's no date on here, like, so the remodel of residence, there's no date to the resident to know when the building permit was pulled. Like, that's why I asked, is the permit number that says 1500754, does that mean of the 754th permit in year 2015?
I would have to actually look at the specific permits.
I'm asking, the coding for the building permit, the next building permit number that gets assigned, does that have anything to do with the year that it's?
But I know what SmartGov does.
But back then
with
we
the
don't
old
know.
one, prior to SmartGov, I'd have to look and see exactly how.
So our new system would be 18004 or whatever we're at, okay. I would assume it is, logically it would make sense, but could you answer that, Matt?
Well, I can look into that, but I'm certainly not going to jump and give an answer at this point.
No, I'm not expecting you to.
I'm not comfortable, I can tell you right now, with giving them a recommendation and say, here's a letter, sign it, and you're going to waive off any potential liability on behalf of the county. We issued the permit initially to have to go out and start this construction. I don't think it would be beneficial for them to say, here's a letter, we're going to waive any responsibility on behalf of the county. I don't think that's we want to pursue.
Well, what if we said that they could schedule a final inspection, or if you want to waive your final inspection? I mean, it's been 3 years. It's been 3 years at this one instance, and I don't know the dates of the other ones. For me, it was almost 5, it was 5 years, it was from 2012, and I got it in 2017, so it was 5 years lacking. So, I don't know, are you guys responsible, would you guys, I'm confused with the responsibility of the county is, because I think the county should have realized long before 5 years that I didn't have my windows inspected at final inspection. I think they should have.
Right, and I can't answer, I can't explain why there was a lag in that. I agree with you, there some action should have been taken much more sooner for the final inspection. But by the same token, how do we not know that they just lucked out for 3 years or 5 years or whatever the case may be? How do we not know it's not a window that's been placed somewhere in an area that's potentially a life and death situation if someone falls through it? I don't know what the situations are for any one individual, but there's nothing to say that 3 years passed and they just lucked out that whole time and nothing's happened. You know, if we would have done a final inspection, we caught something, I don't know, I'm speculating.
Right, I know. So I've got a question. I've never come to get a building permit. If I'm coming to get a building permit to put windows in my home, what information do I need to provide to you?
You know, it's a variety of information, especially, I mean, if you're not doing the work yourself, there's contractors and contractor registration. And typically, you'll have a contractor that works with you on pulling the building permit.
Correct.
But ultimately, it is the owner that's responsible for all the work that is conducted under that permit.
I understand that. I'm saying,
so-
what information do I need to give you? I'm having 6 windows replaced in my home. Do I need to say I'm having 6 windows replaced, or I need to be specific as to where the windows are going?
Yeah, there's a variety of information that's required, including, since building ordinance the fees are based upon cost of construction, you have to have designs. It depends, again, what kind of construction is being done. But, for example, with windows, there's specifications, drawings, manufacturer specifications, and all this information has to be supplied so that our plan reviewer can review it for a variety of different reasons, including life safety matters.
Okay, so then back to you, Matt. So then we know where these windows are being placed because they had to provide that to us. So we can determine by looking at some of this. In this one instance for this community concerns grant, it was insulation. He did have windows, all that kind of stuff. You can look at that and probably make a very good judgment as to whether it would be a life safety issue and they lucked out for 3 years or not. We'd be able to know that.
Well,
And maybe waive the thing on some of this stuff. It was putting in a door, because people have to get a permit to put a door in, although I don't know that anybody does. But let's just say one person actually did pull because he had all his exterior doors filled and replaced. So he get that. So, I mean, is it a life safety issue that his door, I don't know.
Well, I don't know. I mean, we know what things are supposed to go, where they're supposed to go, what's supposed to happen. We don't know if ultimately that's the case. We don't know that without doing a final inspection.
I understand, but it's so many years. I'm just saying, I think it would take the pressure off the landowners if we go back, these cases are years old, in this case, 2.5, and take it off of them without sending this threatening letter, give them an opportunity to say, and we can look into this, Matt, to say, listen, your permit is expired, we'd like to do this, we'd like to do a final inspection, but you also have the ability to waive your right to that final inspection with just these old outstanding cases that for some reason were not closed out. This is just something that I think would be good, would take off. You guys are coming asking for more inspectors for us to hire, and we would be able to get the new projects that are coming in, the new permits, get that moving, versus going back and bothering everybody. I don't know who these other people are, and some people, they probably have the same stress that this landowner had. I'll tell you, when my husband opened the letter that we got at our house, he said every word that I will not repeat here that you can imagine, and he goes, they don't need to come on my property. So it's just like, it's been 5 years, for him. So he was really angry. So maybe other people who open this letter are not angry. I don't know, but I would be angry, and I think anyone who heard me read this letter should be angry. It starts out nice, but then you tell me you're going to put a violation against my house, and if I don't call within 21 days of the date of this letter, although you didn't mail it till the 29th and it stated the 26th. I lost 3 days in that, and I don't know when I actually received it at my house. I might have been out of town. Now I'm really in trouble. And now I gotta do this, or otherwise you're gonna proceed with further enforcement. It's threatening. And it's not this person's fault. Maybe it is, he should have done the final inspection, but the onus of doing a job ends up on the person who's responsible. That would be whoever was in charge of this job at the land use department. That person didn't do their job. I don't know if that person's still working here today. I probably wouldn't have them being employed for me if they didn't do their job for 5 years straight.
Well, I think we're going to disagree on who's responsible, because ultimately it is the property owner who's responsible. But again, we can most certainly, discuss with the state's attorney's office about, the remaining permits. But again, it's not something that we would do administratively. It's something that we want some kind of action taken that would give the authority to do that.
Okay, so then when somebody comes to get a permit and they've got something like this community concerns grant, and they're handed this work page here, which I can give you a copy of it, and it says the final inspection date is 6/11/15. How does that individual know the difference between the final inspection here versus the final inspection you're talking about? I know this is one situation, but we do like to make laws for one situation where somebody's fussing about it, so I'm looking at this one situation here. That's my point. I think it would be good to have Matt look and see, can we waive it on this? Maybe there's certain things we can waive it on and not others. I don't know, but I think that, I don't want to get any more calls about people being mad, because I don't think you guys want to hear me keep talking about it either.
Okay, thank you. You'll look into that then.
On that topic, one of the problems may, and I don't know the procedures with that, but if a person applies for a landowner, or property owner, applies for the permit himself, then you got their phone number and everything else, and in the paperwork, they're told they have to call when they're done to get a final inspection. But now, if they go out and they hire somebody, they pull the permit, the person that pulled the permit's told that they have to call for a final inspection, and well, now you got a guy that put the windows in or a door or whatever, and they don't call for the final inspection. The homeowner assumed that actually the homeowner don't even know you have to call for a final inspection, because they don't look at anything except the paper that goes in their window. And then 5 years later, they get a call. Well, they don't even know, why did I get the call? That's what's going on. So maybe we have to do something with the actual procedure to say that if a company pulls the permit, that the homeowner or property owner, because it could be for something else, a property owner has to sign off on the permit too, and that they have to be told that they have to call, to either them or the people doing the work. So that way, we wouldn't have this situation where people don't know. I don't know if that'll help, and I don't know if that's the answer even, because I don't know what your actual procedures are, but I think that would kind of help to solve it, if you're not already doing it.
I know that with the SmartGov, it's set up in a way where we can now follow up at the 1 year mark as needed. And we can make the appropriate contacts with the individuals so we don't get into situations like this. So Mike did a very good job of setting that up.
Okay, so I have one more thing. So based on what you said then, David, so that the new SmartGov technology software that we purchased and we've installed and we're using now, and our residents use to pull a permit, now it's a year, the permit's open for a year. So what is the process when we follow up with the person? How do we do that? Do we send them a threatening letter like this, or are we going to just say, hey, there's a friendly reminder?
I would actually, I'd have to consult the building division staff to find out exact how SmartGov does interact with the owner now with regard to this.
Because if you could find that out, I'd like to know, and then what our steps are once we know that, and we don't know because we haven't used it for a year yet, but what steps will we take when that year has happened and a final inspection was not done? It gets flagged, a report gets generated. I'm assuming or your desktop tells you you've got it, come up on it, I'm not sure. And then what is the letter that we send out? Because I think it would be nice to say, hey, here's a friendly reminder you didn't get your final inspection, versus threatening you. I don't want to be threatened, period. I don't want to be threatened in any manner, and this letter is threatening. So maybe we look at redesigning the first contact with the person, if you could look into that. Thank you.
Any other comments by committee? Okay, David, do you have any more comments? Or- Okay. Any public comment? Anybody from the public? No? Okay, we need to have an executive session, the discussion of it's litigation, possible litigation. Need a motion to go into an executive session?
Motion.
Motion, second, roll call, please.
Denise Winfrey, Judy O'Gala.
Yes.
Lori Summers.
Yes.
Steve Ballage.
Yes.
Mark Barry.
Yes.
Tom Weigel.
Yes.